What's up everyone, I'm Kirk and this is the State of the Boom, your monthly recap of FPS news, releases, and upcoming titles. And in today's episode, we have a big update on the indie MSim Fortune's Run and its developer, plus someone went and colorized Mouse PI for Hire. But before we get into those, we do have some announcements to touch on. This last month, the Second Wind Game Showcase was held, hosted by the ever-opinionated Ben Yahtzee Croshaw. The 2.5-hour-long live stream showed off over 50 upcoming independent games, roguelites, card games, platformers, horror titles, as well as, you guessed it, some first-person shooters. Here's what was shown off. Luna Abyss is a story-driven bullet hell shooter that, to me, had some shades of anime like Evangelion. It's releasing next month on May 21st, and there is a demo available for it now on Steam. There was a new trailer for Kook showing off some new roly-poly gravity-defying levels. Kook is an MC Escher-inspired boom shoot that I've talked about a few times in my past booms. I continue to have a good feeling about it, and I think this is one to keep an eye on. Battle fantasy pixel hordes with high-powered weaponry in Guns and Goblins, a survival horde shooter where you must hold the fort. Looks pretty fun and addictive. There was a new Dev Diary trailer for Hark the Ghoul, showing off the emergent aspects of its gameplay. There's a demo for this retro-inspired dungeon crawler on Steam right now. There was a gameplay trailer for Animal Use Protocol, a first-person survival horror where you play as a chimpanzee who appears to have been involved in some scientific experimentation. Cleaner Company is a 4-player co-op game where you and your buddies must dispose of corpses on a space station and battle any vicious aliens left over. I like to think of it as the cleanup crew for a Dead Space game. There was a bizarre but hilarious trailer for Polyarmory, a first-person shooter mixed with a dating simulator where you romance guns. Yep, that's a real game out there, folks. There was a trailer for the impending early access launch of Far Far West, the over-the-top online co-op shooter depicting a sci-fi western theme. Blisteringly fast movement shooter HMUR, or maybe Hummer, showed off a trailer. You know, the more I've been doing this channel, the more I've become a sucker for fast-paced shooters like this, and I am likely checking this out when it drops. Athanasia is a retro-style MSim where you must survive against dinosaurs in a high-tech secret facility. Decent trailer, definitely looks cool, but this one I feel I need to play first before I can get hype for it.
Adrenaline is surging, no time for doubt, the beast is emerging. Suit up, this is a surgical strike.
There was a trailer for Shatter Rush, which looks like a low-poly spiritual successor to Titanfall, but with realistic destruction physics. I had no idea this game existed until this trailer, and as someone who has wanted a Titanfall 3 for years now, this may scratch some of that itch. Finally, there was a trailer for Derelict, which I remember seeing announced in previous livestream shows and honestly forgot about, so it was nice to have this reminder. This one is inspired by the Alien Resurrection FPS on PS1, as well as classics like Doom 3 and System Shock 2. For an old crusty gamer like me who grew up on this sort of aesthetic, I'm looking forward to playing this one sometime this year. Moving on, Mouse PI for Hire was finally released on April 16th, and I think it's safe to say it was a hit with critics and players, minus one particular reviewer who wasn't too enthused on all the cheese puns. I reviewed it as well and had a lot of Gouda things to say about it. Sorry, couldn't help myself. You can find the link to that below. But this story isn't just to give Mouse a big pat on the back. No, while the game is still fresh out of the gate, a group of dedicated fans are working to add improvements to the game as well as a fresh coat of paint. Literally, in the form of a mod called Mouse Reloaded. Available to download on the ModDB, Mouse Reloaded provides a host of quality of life improvements, such as new crosshair options, being able to rename saves, the ability to use the flashlight anywhere, and best of all, being able to replay main and side missions. Not being able to replay missions was one of the biggest complaints about mouse, and it is something FPS Games should patch into the game in the future. The mod also restores some cut content, like the Lewis gun, as well as some cut enemies. But the big headline of the mod are the added visual options, like ultra widescreen and HDR support, and most of all, color options, with a full color mode giving mouse the appearance of an old pulpy comic book, a sepia mode, along with an enhanced black and white mode. There's even an option to turn on red blood ink, for those that want to bump this T-rated game to an M.
I'm sure there's a nice, rational explanation for this.
While this is all very cool, it needs to be stressed. This mod is in an early alpha state, very much a work in progress with some issues to be ironed out. For one, the performance is a little shaky with the color and sepia modes. The load times have been extended quite a bit. Also, the quality of life improvements, such as replaying missions, are accessed through a separate menu, which isn't the most straightforward and is really more of a hack rather than a polished integrated feature. And utilizing it to jump to different levels is somewhat confusing at the moment. The colorizing is also far from finished. There are assets yet to be colored, like the weapons and skyboxes, and personally, I think the color work is going to need a lot of TLC to get it right. There are some levels that look pretty good so far with color, and some not so much. Plus, some of the colorizing is bugged in parts. Again though, this is all very early, so expectations should be kept in check. Also with the different color modes, you aren't able to switch between them willy-nilly. They are only available through 3 different versions of the mod. So for this video, I stuck with the full color version. This mod is not for those playing mouse for the first time. Those new to mouse should play through it in black and white first, as the developers intended. A big part of what makes it so great is how the devs creatively used the black and white palette to distinguish a huge amount of environments. Really, this mod is firmly for those that have beaten mouse and want to play around with it and have an easier way to jump through its levels. Although I would advise even those players to maybe wait and let this mod cook a little longer so that some of its rough parts can be smoothed out. But overall, this is a really cool mod, with some features that really should be in the standard game, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it evolves. Also, the mod team is looking for more help, specifically Unity developers, programmers, and artists. So if you're interested in contributing, reach out to the devs either on Twitter or through their Discord. I have links to those down in the description, as well as the ModDB page. Before we get into our final story, I have some quick bits of news to throw at ya. Fatbot Games announced that their retro-inspired boomer shooter, Gravelord, will be leaving early access on May 21st. Gravelord released into early access at the beginning of last year, and has enjoyed a positive reception from players. It even received a roguelite spin-off called Horde Lord. I've been waiting for this one to leave early access before I jump into it, so I'm excited to see what all the fuss is about. The Wild Gentlemen put out a new trailer for their upcoming disco punk sim Retrospace, announcing that it will be coming to consoles. PS5, Nintendo Switch 2, as well as the Xbox Series family. Sadly, no firm release date yet, but this one is targeting a 2026 release. Last, this was a small thing that I caught on my social media feed, but composer Andrew Holschult put out an X post saying, quote, "I have something very different coming with the Prodeus DLC. Different enough for me to make a tweet about it." What he's likely referring to is the long-awaited Prodeus story DLC, The Elder Veil. Originally revealed back in 2023, news on the DLC has been somewhat radio silent since, much to the ire of patient Prodeus fans. So hopefully this post from Holschult is an indication that we will be getting some information on it soon, keeping my fingers crossed. As far as what Holschult is doing different musically for this DLC remains to be heard, but I have my theories.
Dark sun. It's been the room of many a poor girl. And me.
This is Fortune's Run. Released into Steam Early Access back in 2023, it is a sci-fi immersive sim set in the far, far future, taking inspiration from a variety of genre classics like 2001: A Space Odyssey, The Fifth Element, Dune, you name it. You play as Mosa, an ex-convict who is released from prison on a work program to shorten her sentence. Essentially mercenary work and corporate espionage. From the get-go, Fortune's Run was proving to be one of the densest and mechanically rich immersive sims out there, with an acrobatic movement system, stealth system, in-depth cooking and healing, not to mention gunplay and hand-to-hand combat. Difficult? Yes, but a rewarding experience for those who fully immerse themselves and learn all of its particulars. Fortune's Run truly embraces the player way ethos of early immersive sims, and whether you go about it sneaky or guns a-blazing, it lends a fun experience that, despite its complexities, which do have a bit of a learning curve, has options to make it more accessible to younger players or those new to the genre. Most impressively, all of it was largely developed by a two-person team hailing from Canada, the project lead going by the name Dizzy and her wife Arachne. And despite being a small crew, they managed to keep the updates consistent, adding new features and addressing player feedback. Fortune's Run was gaining strong momentum in the indie shooter community, and those who had experienced it were quick to recommend it to others. I played it myself and spent hours in it, bubbling my way through, as I'm honestly terrible at this game, but marveling at the quality of work put into it and the sheer amount of detail. But then Fortune's Run went from a promising sprint to a disappointing halt. On January 14th, 2025, Dizzy would post a shocking update on Steam informing the FR community that she was about to serve 3 years in prison. While Dizzy would not specify what she was going away for, she explained, quote, "It's a long story, but I've lived a very different life before I was a game developer. My case is about 5 years old now. I have finally been found guilty and sentenced, and I'm going away next month. It's a shame, but it's the consequences of my actions. I was a very violent person and I hurt a lot of people in my life." Piling more onto this bummer train, prior to this announcement, Dizzy's wife, Arachne, was forced to step away from the project after almost passing away from health complications stemming from an undisclosed botched surgery, which is horrible to say the least, leaving Dizzy the sole developer. Fortune's Run would not be cancelled, but obviously put on indefinite hold until Dizzy finished her 3-year sentence, an incredibly disappointing and worrying prospect for the game's fans. Although she did state her determination to finish the game and managed to put out a sizable update before going away. Okay, now the good news. After a year in the slammer, Dizzy has been released on parole. On April 3rd, she released a new update post on Steam. According to the post, Dizzy is on the warpath to completing Fortune's Run, but is still pulling together a plan of how to do it. She is currently living in a halfway house and getting organized, figuring out dates and making a plan for development and QA. For the moment, she remains the sole developer of Fortune's Run. Quote, "It's time to be a responsible adult and not spend months developing soldering minigames so that you all actually get to see a 1.0. Dizzy is shooting to have something out in 6 months' time, but in the Steam post stressed that she has only been out 72 hours and was still getting adjusted. Either way, it's going to be a bit of a wait before new content comes to Fortune's Run, but at least we don't have to wait 3 years for it. FYI, I have Dizzy's Steam posts linked below if you want to read through all the details of what comes next in development. There's also a post detailing some of her experiences in prison, but just to warn, it's pretty brutal. All I have to say is that this is easily one of the wildest early access developments I've heard about. I'm happy Dizzy has served her time, gotten out, and gotten back to work, especially since Fortune's Run, so far, is a pretty incredible game, and inspiring considering it's coming from somebody who is trying to turn their life around. While it's still in early access, if you love immersive sims or just think this looks cool, I recommend giving Fortune's Run a peek. Truly, there's nothing quite like it out there. And now let's take a look at the FPS titles that released last month that you may have missed. As always, if there's a release I missed, be sure to shout it out in the comments. Also, real quick, if you haven't yet, be sure to check out my other videos from this last month, my review for Mouse PI for Hire and the Twisted Game Show Luck Rot, as well as my preview of the platformer action RPG Second Stone. And if you're new here and you like the content, please subscribe and like. It's a very big help with the algorithm and getting my content to more people. Kicking things off, speedrunning FPS Gutter Punk sprinted onto Steam on the 1st, and it's free! Online PvP wizard shooter Battle Magi casted onto Steam on the 1st as well, and it's also free! A movement shooter where you shoot slime to eliminate friction. Slime City Trials spurted out on the 2nd. Dear Lord! Guns N' Nuns stormed onto Steam on the 3rd for some holy boom shootery. A 90s throwback set in a wacky world of toys, Toyful Wonderful brought some retro charm on the 3rd. A sci-fi FPS RPG with roguelite elements, Operation Terra entered early access on the 3rd. Horror roguelite It Has My Face, where you must track down and eliminate your clone, creeped everyone out on the 3rd. Battle waves of aliens in the subways of New York in Subway Invasion, released on the 3rd. Online snowball fight FPS Snow War got tossed out onto Steam on the 3rd. Ninja Boom Shoot Akuma Blood Rain slashed onto Steam on April 6th. Survival horror FPS Terminal Mass released on the 6th as well, for about a $3.50. Hardcore survival FPS Road to Vostok got us rationing and running on the 7th. Bizarre Boom Shoot Agony Increment shot out on the 8th. Chonky retro FPS Hand Meat Walker demolished some polygons on the 9th. Set, the Egyptian mythology roguelite, launched on the 9th. Trippy speed shooter Tamashika potentially caused a seizure or two on the 10th. Speed Shot zoomed out for some speedrunning excitement on the 10th. The Hexen-inspired shooter, The Soul of Ramet, entered early access on the 11th. An old-school FPS with RPG elements, Cyberscape emerged on the 13th, complete with full modding support and a built-in level editor. As part of an initiative to bring classic Warhammer 40k games to Steam, Fire Warrior was re-released on the platform on the 13th. Recover stolen relics and escape before the time runs out, in old-school FPS Altered Priest. Victorian old-school shooter Vile battled the undead on the 14th. Dystopian roguelite Luckrot released on the 15th. PvP roguelite shooter Blood Reaver ripped onto early access on the 15th. The beers have been stolen and you have to get them back, in comedic shooter Hunkfrat, released on the 15th. Mouse PI for Hire finally dropped on the 16th. Wave-based arcade shooter Void Daggers racked up the high scores on the 16th. If Pragmata wasn't the moon adventure you wanted, then maybe together Moon Escape will do the trick for you. A co-op adventure where you work with a buddy to get off everyone's favorite white rock. The Blood Maul Remaster, Blood Maul Retaped, brought some static 1980s horror on the 22nd. 40v40 online shooter 83, depicting an alternate version of the Cold War, entered early access on the 23rd. Fight the aliens on your farm in Utter Invasion, which released into early access on the 24th. Footslog is a retro FPS with a unique reloading mechanic and a lot of darkness. It dropped into early access on the 24th. Captcha the Flag proved it was human on the 26th, a PvP shooter with fully destructible terrain where every time you reload, you must do a captcha puzzle. Sci-fi western-themed Far Far West brought 4-player co-op gunslinging. It released into early access on the 28th. A spiritual successor to Gary's Mod built on the Source 2 engine, SN Box brought endless possibilities on the 28th. An old-school horror FPS, Morker got players splatting cultists and zombies on the 28th. Narrative-driven FPS Industria 2 finally launched on the 29th. Over-the-top melee FPS Wham Punch hit the ground running on the 29th. And finally, Bomberball is an online sports shooter hybrid. It got players fragging and scoring goals on the 30th. Wrapping things up, let's take a look at some of the FPS titles coming this month. May is starting off spooky with Evil of Fate, an online co-op horror shooter. Blood Vial is a micro FPS where you must race through levels before your health leaks away. It sprints out on May the 4th. Zooming out on the 6th is Mech Draken, a wire grid PvP movement shooter. Tactical Vietnam shooter Beyond Enemy Lines, Vietnam, drops on the 6th, featuring co-op, PvP, and a mission editor. Cutesy Halloween boom shoot Vampire Pumpkin Plot gets all spooky on the 8th. Brutal body cam shooter Better Than Dead provides some Hong Kong action movie shenanigans with eerily realistic graphics on May 12th. Inspired by classics like Unreal and Quake 2, Flaw is a retro-style shooter where you must fight your way back to Earth. It enters early access on the 12th. Also on the 12th is the horrifying-looking Saint of Chains, a first-person psychological horror that looks like Condemned had a baby with Silent Hill. Stepping onto Steam on the 15th, The Adventures of Sir Kix-a-Lot is a goofy mixture of Dark Messiah of Might and Magic and Minecraft. Deep Rock Galactic spin-off Rogue Core comes to early access on May 20th, an action-intensive 4-player cooperative FPS roguelite with procedurally generated caves. If you ask me, it's the perfect sort of thing for this IP. Bullet hell shooter Luna Abyss releases on the 21st. World War I squad-based shooter Gallipoli storms the beaches on the 21st as well. And on the 21st, retro shooter Gravelord leaves early access. Use your blood as ammo and your head as a weapon in the eccentric speed shooter Blood High, flying out on the 22nd. Bouncing out on the 27th, dodgeball shooter Sideless has you take on enemies by bouncing a ball. Inspired by the games of the Amiga, Enigmatic Worlds is a retro-style FPS where you must battle enemies on abstract worlds. It also drops on the 27th. And that will do it for this State of the Boom. If there's any other news stories or releases not talked about here that you care about, be sure to shout them out in the comments. I'm Kirk, and thank you for taking the time to watch this video. Stay safe out there.